Charlotte Emily is a name that most FNAF fans know and at least know a good bit about her character, but the information around her is so messy and speculative that it often gets confusing to actually talk about who Charlotte Emily is. And for those less in the know, the Marionette is an even bigger enigma. So I thought another Rye lists all the direct lore and relevant speculation about a character and there shows a mini timeline about them video would be fitting here. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. To go chronologically by game for the lore here would be admittedly so confusing that it would be unhelpful. So let's start with how we know this character even exists, and then we'll go game by game. In FNAF 6, the main ending of the game has a very downtrodden man give us a monologue as to why he set up all of FNAF 6. And in the monologue, he says this:
"My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well."
In essence, this is telling us that the guy who set up FNAF 6 has a daughter who was killed by William Afton, who goes on to possess the Marionette and then help the other spirits of the MCI. I just went over this in the Henry video, but plenty of the evidence here points to that man giving the monologue being Henry Emily from the Silver Eyes, the co-owner of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. In the books, he had a daughter named Charlotte who was killed by William Afton. Now, in the books, he then recreates her as a robot and it's this whole messy thing, but the important thing to know is that likely the "my daughter" referenced here is Charlotte Emily, and in the game's continuity, she possesses the Marionette. And according to this monologue, she, as the Marionette, is the thing that helped allow the MCI victims to possess the animatronic suits. So with that information in mind, that this child is Charlotte Emily who's possessing the Marionette, where does this character crop up outside of the FNAF 6 monologue? A majority of information about Charlotte comes from FNAF 2. Most of the death minigames center or at least feature Charlotte Emily before and after her death. Give Gifts, Give Life is essentially the game showing us that as the Marionette, she assisted the missing child incident victims in possessing their animatronic suits. Now, some people take this minigame as her literally shoving the bodies into the suits, but I don't think that makes much sense. I think it's much more likely that we're going off of the logic of Alone Together. In that Tales in the Pizzaplex book, it's explained that when somebody dies and their body remains unfound, that spirit might not have their own memories. They might not even realize they're dead. It takes that spirit finding their own body to know. And in many iterations of the MCI, the spirits are not aware that they're dead. They're simply playing at Freddy's, unaware that anything's happened. So I think the most likely real-life version of what this minigame is saying is that Charlotte, as the Marionette, someone whose body was left out in an alleyway, which we'll get to, has her memories. And when those spirits show up and don't have theirs, she helps them find their bodies, get their memories back, and allow them to then possess the animatronics. Okay, and now I'm right back where I started. A week of walking, and we're right back to the first room. I guess only one of these hallways will lead anywhere interesting, and I'm just gonna have to keep trying. At least the doors are still open, so I know I'm making progress. But the room is the exact same, except for that. A sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Fume. Nice. Cravings aren't just about nicotine. They're about the habit, the hand-to-mouth motion, oral fixation. When that loop is broken, cravings spike. Fume replaces your habit with a flavored air fidget device that gives your hand and mouth something to do, distracting cravings without nicotine, vapor, or batteries. Don't just try to quit, upgrade the habit loop. Reach for Fume instead. Now, let me be super clear straight away. Fume is not a vape, e-cigarette, or anything like that. I do not support smoking, and I would not promote anything like smoking on my channel. With Fume, there's no nicotine, no vapor, no batteries, or anything like that. It is only Fume's essential oil infused flavor cores inside their sleek, fridge-friendly device. They provide something to reach for to help break the habit loop. Here's an example. I tend to snack when I'm hungry, and I'm on a bit of a weight loss journey. Fume has been instrumental in helping with that. I keep my Fume right at my desk next to my computer, and whenever I feel those cravings start to bubble up and I want to go get something to snack with, instead, I reach for Fume, something that keeps my body busy to help my brain stay focused. And with my favorite flavor, crisp mint, it's even a little treat inside just for me. Now instead, I can fidget with this, or even chew on it with their Fume topper. If you're ready to break the habit, now's a great time to try Fume. Right now, when you grab a journey pack, you'll get a free Fume topper just for using my code RYTOAST. The Fume topper adds a soft, replaceable, chewable mouthpiece, giving your mouth something safe to chew on when cravings hit. Grab this offer while it's available. Go to tryfume.com, that's TRYFUM.com, and use code RYTOAST to get your free Fume topper with a journey pack today. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Alright, well, the first door was a bust. Try door number 2. In Save Them, we see the Marionette leading Withered Freddy to try and stop William Afton from doing what he's doing. This has a lot of implications, but it seems like Charlotte is actively working against William Afton. And most notably, in Take Cake to the Children, we see Charlotte Emily outside of a Freddy's or Fazbear restaurant, William Afton roll up in a car, kill her, and drive away. Now, this minigame does spark an intense debate. What restaurant is this? Some people argue it's Fredbear's. After all, the layout is very basic and we only see this bear-like animatronic, which could be Freddy or Fredbear. It's hard to tell with these graphics. Other people try to use the timeline to argue that it's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Admittedly, there's not much evidence for either side, at least not yet. Before we move on from FNAF 2, I should mention that she also pops up here in these between night cutscenes, but like just the one time, and it's really confusing, not super helpful. Notably, that is the FNAF 1 Freddy's though. So like, is this the original Freddy's location, or was the Marionette at the FNAF 1 Freddy's? That's another debate. In FNAF 3, while less direct, we do get mentions of the Marionette throughout the Happiest Day minigames. Depending on what Happiest Day minigame you're playing as a different animatronic. However, in the main Happiest Day minigame, we're playing as a spirit wearing the puppet mask. And I think it's not too far of a stretch to assume that anything we're playing in the Happiest Day minigames is that spirit, aka Charlotte Emily is the one trying to create the happiest day for the crying child. There's also this rare Easter egg where the Marionette can appear in one of the FNAF 3 hallways, notably with a reflection, so some people use this to argue that the Marionette was lurking at that location, likely looking for William Afton. Now, there's not really any mentions of Charlotte Emily or the Marionette in FNAF 4 or Sister Location. But that does bring us back to 6, where the monologue is not the only time she's brought up, because of the security puppet minigame. If you play enough, you can get this Easter egg, where one girl is locked outside and bullies have prevented the Marionette from going to fetch her. Eventually the Marionette breaks out, but by that time she's left the window. It hunts her down, but when it gets to her, it's too late, and the little girl is dead in the alleyway. The heavy rain shutting down the Marionette as it collapses on top of her. It's heavily implied that this is when Charlotte Emily possesses the Marionette. After all, she died and then had an animatronic essentially die on top of her. So yeah, that tracks. Moving on to FNAF World, this is definitely more speculative, but there's no real good other place to put it. Because the thing is, there's no real direct mentions of Charlotte Emily or the Marionette in FNAF World. But there's a lot of references to the Happiest Day minigames in FNAF World. In fact, doing the clock ending is essentially recreating Happiest Day from FNAF 3, but in FNAF World. And if the Happiest Day is something that was likely done by Charlotte Emily, then can we extend that logic to the entirety of FNAF World? That FNAF World is something created by Charlotte Emily. I think it's possible when using evidence we find in Ultimate Custom Night. There's a decent amount of evidence linking FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night. Not only are they both weird side games in the FNAF franchise, but some of their Easter eggs connect. Notably, if you don't have the achievement for the drowning ending in FNAF World, the one where you find Old Man Consequences and drown in his lake, but then in Ultimate Custom Night, you get the Old Man Consequences Easter egg and drown in his lake, the achievement triggers in FNAF World. These games are connected. And if they are, and if they're happening at the same time, then some of the Marionette death lines are very interesting. First of all, we have,
"The others are like animals, but I am very aware."
Which honestly isn't super relevant to the point I'm about to make, but it does lean into the idea that the FNAF 2 movie presents, one that the Marionette can remotely control any of the FNAF 2 animatronics. But that's not what's important right now. What's important is the line,
"I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way."
This line is incredibly interesting. As far as we're aware, everything in Ultimate Custom Night is created by one specific person to haunt and torture William Afton for the rest of time. But here comes Charlotte Emily as the Mimic, essentially telling William, "I'm not here to torture you. I don't care about you, but you are impeding what I am trying to do." What are you trying to do, Charlotte? Well, if FNAF World and Ultimate Custom Night are taking place at the same time, it could be Charlotte's thinking that some of the spirits are not able to move on so long as William Afton is still alive. In other words, she's moved on from hating William Afton. She just needs him to stop existing so the other spirits can find peace. Now, like a lot of older Five Nights at Freddy's characters, her story seems to end with the FNAF 6 fires. After all, there's really no mention of Charlotte Emily or the puppet in Help Wanted moving forward. Now, there are Nightmarionette plushes throughout Security Breach, Help Wanted 2, Ruin, etc., but Nightmarionette is a loose connection. It's a Halloween variant of the Marionette, and it's the Nightmarionette plushies that are all over. Interpretation of these is strange at best. I personally believe it's a representation of the VR games, but that's also speculative. Frankly, it's really weird and it doesn't super fit in anywhere, so for now, it's being left out. We already ran over a good amount of speculation in the lore part of this video, because you kind of have to with Charlotte Emily. But there are some books that provide additional information that we don't get from the games directly, and looser evidence that I think is useful to bring in. But it's not in the Silver Eyes. In fact, I'm going to bring up a book you're probably not even thinking of, Five Nights at Freddy's Ticket to Fun, because this isn't a book. It's a glorified toy box, but inside of it is a mini brochure for a lot of different things that happened at Fazbear locations. But the important thing to bring up for today's video is this page on party wristbands, which reads, along with food, games, and entertainment, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza also hosts birthday parties. All parties are catered by our Freddy Fazbear's Pizza kitchen, and goodie bags and balloons are complimentary. Additionally, all children attending parties at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza are provided with wristbands as a souvenir of their time at our establishment and to easily track party attendees. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that there is a debate on whether or not Charlotte Emily died at Fredbear's Family Diner or Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But if you remember in the security puppet minigame, the Marionette is able to find Charlotte Emily because she was wearing that security wristband. The party wristband that's mentioned in this brochure as being a part of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear's Family Diner. To make it even more severe, this page has a UV lining, and if you take a black light to it, it shows the sprite from Security Puppet, the sprite of Charlotte being locked outside. This is damn near confirmation from an activity toy box that Charlotte Emily died in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear's Family Diner. This is why we stress out about lore in any location. This is why we looked at the coloring book for lore. You never know with this franchise. Now, this is very important to the timeline because since it's guaranteed to have taken place in a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, she could not have been killed before 1983. Now, I would personally argue that this means she must have died after the crying child was bit, which then gives William motivation to kill her, but there's no hard evidence for that. So, with all of this evidence in mind, who is Charlotte Emily, and what is the timeline surrounding her character? Charlotte Emily was the only daughter of Henry Emily, co-owner of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a perfectly normal child who was just a victim of circumstance and her father's overly trusting nature. Unaware as to what was being brewed in the mind of William Afton, one day some bullies locked Charlotte Emily outside of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and it was that fateful day that an angry William Afton was coming to pay a visit. Seeing the opportunity, he killed Charlotte Emily in the alleyway and drove off. But the Marionette still tried to chase her down due to her security bracelet, and due to the heavy rain, was malfunctioning along the way, eventually collapsing on top of her, as the two lay there, freshly dead, together. And it was in that moment that Charlotte Emily's spirit goes on to possess the Marionette. But she remembers what happened. She remembered that William killed her, and she couldn't rest until he was finally brought to justice. So for some time, she remained, looking for an opportunity to catch William Afton in the act, to show her father the kind of man William Afton truly was. But after some time, some new spirits entered the pizzeria. Spirits that remained there but didn't know that they were dead. 5 children happily playing together in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Surely something was wrong, and Charlotte Emily had to help them find out the truth. She showed them each of their own bodies, stuffed into the animatronics. And when she did that, one by one, their memories returned to them. And it was in that moment that they would have been able to find peace and rest, but they had other plans as well. William Afton was still off being dangerous. They couldn't let him get away with this. However, William Afton proved more cunning than they were aware of. At the FNAF 2 location, she tried to cut him off with Withered Freddy, but he either outsmarted or overpowered them, and they failed. They tried to attack men that looked like him, but they were either wrong or unable to finish the job. It wasn't until one day that his greed became so great that it became his undoing. Keeping them trapped in the suits wasn't enough. He needed more material. So he went to the FNAF 1 location after it had closed, and began to take apart the animatronics piece by piece, night after night. But all this did was allow those spirits to roam freely throughout the pizzeria. And it was on that last night, when he came back for just a little bit more material, that the spirits of those animatronics attacked. They cornered him in a back room, and in a panic, he put on the Spring Bonnie suit and died. But again, Charlotte remained. According to the character encyclopedia, she had a way to sense that he was still around, and she waited to make sure he'd stay down. Until one day, when she was tricked by an animatronic bear. One built by her very own father. One built with the express purpose to lure the marionette, encapsulate it inside of it, fuse itself to it, transport it to the FNAF 6 location, and extract Charlotte Emily inside. In other words, the marionette was captured by Lefty, and Charlotte Emily was brought to the FNAF 6 location just before the fire. And like the rest of the company in the building, they were all burned away and began to find peace. But Charlotte Emily realized that several of the spirits were still stuck and unable to rest. And it's there and then that she began using the memories of the victims in the fire to help them achieve rest, creating FNAF World, helping spirits like the crying child finally rest after all these years. And that's Charlotte Emily. I know it's a bit out there at certain moments, but I do think that for the most part, this is a pretty agreeable timeline for her character. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I way off, or did I get kinda close? In the meantime, if you want to hear about a different game, Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 just came out and my full breakdown can be found right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with hashtag ToastArt. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. Go to tryfume.com and use code RYTOAST to get your free Fume topper with a journey pack today. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's video. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.